We're going to now hear from Anna Kerr from Australia. She's the principal solicitor at Feminist Legal Clinic, Inc. in Australia. Over to you, Anna.
I'm going to be focusing on Article 2 of the Declaration, which reaffirms motherhood as an exclusively female status. The next slide sets out Article 2 in detail, but I won't read all of that, but just to say that the Declaration recognises women's unique capacity to gestate and give birth to children, and that the physical and biological characteristics that distinguish males and females mean that women's reproductive capacity cannot be shared by men who claim a female gender identity. So the Women's Human Rights Campaign recognises that not all women are mothers, or even want to be, but that all mothers are women. However, this is getting rather confusing. The Australian National University has recently released a gender inclusive handbook that seriously recommends that we ditch the words mother and breastfeeding and instead refer to pregnant person and chest feeding. And this mirrors similar developments in many places around the world. It would be funny if it weren't so sinister. It's not only academics who are working to erase mothers, but also politicians everywhere. For example, parliaments in New South Wales and South Australia have recently passed otherwise welcome legislation to decriminalise abortion, but which entirely omit the words woman or mother. So this attempted erasure of mothers is happening not only in Australia, but as part of an orchestrated global movement to airbrush the words pregnant woman, breastfeeding and mothers from our vocabulary. But in some parts of the world, women are beginning to fight back. A recent attempt to omit mothers from a maternity leave bill in the United Kingdom was hotly debated by the House of Lords recently, with the result that the word mother has been retained in that context at least. But it's not only conservative people raising objections to this attempted change in language. There have been vocal complaints from Black women in the United States about the offensiveness of being reduced to Black birthing bodies, effectively stripping women of their humanity with language reminiscent of slavery. A legal case has also been brought in the United Kingdom to attempt to have mothers removed from birth certificates. In the United Kingdom, Freddie McConnell, who is a female who identifies as a man, brought legal proceedings to be registered as a father on their child's birth certificate, despite having given birth to the child. However, the appeal court ruled that motherhood is defined as being pregnant and giving birth, despite the fact that other nonsensical legislation has allowed a female to be legally considered a man in law. Next slide, please. But since we know only females can give birth, is this all just a matter of semantics? I mean, does it matter? We know that all those individuals who were in the previous slide who appear to be pregnant are in fact female, despite what they might have done to cosmetically alter their appearance. But unfortunately, all of this is taking a context where mothers really are being erased, not just linguistically, but in practice. We are seeing the removal of children from socioeconomically disadvantaged mothers, especially in developing countries, to meet an increasing demand for babies, particularly by gay male couples. And there are some of the babies that were stranded recently as a result of COVID. Contractual rights, as in surrogacy agreements, are overriding the human rights of women and children. Wealthy men are ordering babies as if they are the latest consumer good. There is also a growing trend in Western countries, at least, to forcibly remove children from mothers and place them with their fathers when there has been a relationship breakdown. Disturbingly, this is increasingly happening in circumstances where there is a context of domestic violence or unresolved allegations of child sexual abuse against the father. So women who cannot afford a child have long been at risk of having them removed and handed to those with more money. Earning capacity is increasingly taking precedence as the criteria determining whether an individual gets the opportunity to parent. Women are being reduced to breeding vessels for the wealthy, and children are being traded as commodities. Furthermore, money is also being invested in technologies that will allow men to dispense with mothers altogether, including artificial wombs, womb transplants into men, and cloning technologies. This desperation by men to develop these technologies makes one wonder whether the male species really is in its death throes. And that picture there is of the bio bag, which is an artificial womb that is in development. So why does all this matter? Isn't this biological essentialism? And I would say yes, because the mother-child attachment does have a physiological basis, and it does constitute a crucial bond in a child's development. To plan to begin a life with the trauma of being separated from one's mother is hardly in a child's best interests. I believe what I hear from adoptee rights activists who tell me that the disruption of this attachment results in a primal wound that doesn't ever fully heal. I also believe that mothers play an essential safeguarding role, protecting children from male violence, and that the removal of a child from its mother is a cruel and unusual punishment and a significant infringement of human rights of both mother and child. So Article 12 of CEDAW requires that states ensure that women have equal rights with men in relation to family planning, despite the fact that women have a far greater exposure to risk and investment in having a child. I would suggest that this is one area where women require additional rights. Human rights instruments recognise the family as the fundamental unit of society and extend little protection to the unique bond between a mother and child. In my experience, protecting the family is a euphemism often for protecting the rights of fathers. For example, in Australia, a men's rights group known as the Australian Brotherhood of Fathers, ABF, has now established a political party called Australian Better Families, also ABF. On the basis of their mere ejaculation, Australian family laws place men in a position to exercise control over every aspect of a woman and child's life, including controlling where they can live, their activities and decisions in relation to healthcare, education, etc. This applies even if the father is failing, like so many, to provide any level of child support. Indeed, these laws apply even in the case of men who are rapists or are otherwise abusive or violent to the mother. It is increasingly difficult for women to be successful with those kind of allegations. While it's true that not all women are mothers, all mothers are women, and giving birth has a very significant physical and psychological impact on a woman. The same does not apply to men who may conceive a child and never know it's born or suffer any feeling of loss. Correspondingly, a child will not miss its genetic father if separated at birth, but will suffer significant distress if removed from its mother. It is also still the case that mothers continue to be primary caregivers for children in the vast majority of cases. Furthermore, in view of the greater male propensity for violence and sexually abusive behaviours, I would suggest that women should think very carefully before trading the status of motherhood for some ill-conceived gender ideology and flimsy promises of equality.